How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Today, me and Connie are going to discuss how to deal with the frustrations of working in corrections. You know, I've done about 700-something videos. I like to think that we don't sugarcoat. I mean, we give people reality. And for those that want to be in this profession, that's great. You want to have that motivation. But sometimes you may feel that you lose that bit of motivation because this field could be very challenging. And I think sometimes what happens here is that we tend to forget the reasons why we've entered this profession, and then we wind up getting lost in how we feel in the moment. And I just think that me and Connie, the reason why we want to do this episode is it's okay to have those moments of frustration, but we want to kind of try to figure out, and we'll have the dialogue as it goes because we're still going to try to figure it out when we do this. But basically is, what do you do when you're frustrated? I mean, that's the key. And I think this is a great dialogue because I know right now there's got to be a lot of us going through the frustrations of being in this profession. But part of this dialogue is actually going to break away from the front line and higher level management. I think a lot of the frustration, again, not to minimize the concerns of the front line because we do discuss the front line a lot because they do deal with a blunt of the concerns. But sometimes middle management tends to go unnoticed. And I'm talking about good middle management, good leaders that are in the middle trying to negotiate and balance the needs of both the front line and higher level. And I think that even though we explored this before, there's another perspective that we want to add, which is the reason why we're able to have the second dialogue. So, Connie, you want to introduce yourself to our audience?
Hello, I am Connie Alleyne. I am the founder and president of the Civilian Corrections Academy. I'm also the host of the Fly Behind the Wall and Conversations with Connie. I am looking forward to today's dialogue, particularly because I remember many days of feeling stuck and feeling helpless and feeling hopeless because sometimes the job can make you feel that way. That's just a reality. So certainly it wasn't an easy decision about what to do next, but it is doing the hard work in preparation for your next step.
Right. And guys, be on the lookout. Connie's going to have her first interview, which she is the host. She interviewed an APRN. I'm looking forward to posting that. I will probably have that posted sometime over the weekend. If not, the latest will be Monday, but most likely I'll have it posted on Saturday morning. So if you guys get a chance, it's about a 30-minute interview, very interesting. And we're actually going to dedicate that video to the Correctional Nursing Group on Facebook. So if you're watching it, I'm giving you guys a shout out, the Correctional Nursing Group on Facebook. You have accepted us as part of your family, and we are honored to be part of that family. I believe Connie still has a request to join that group. So can we accept Connie's request, please? Look for it, find it. I know it's there. She is so wanting to learn from that group. There's a lot of things to offer, and she is on the outside knocking on that door, and nobody seems to be answering. Answer the door, correctional nursing. And by the way, thank you, ladies or gentlemen, for all you do in the corrections profession. We do greatly appreciate you. Now, guys, we're going to go to our sponsor, and when we come back, we are going to be discussing getting frustrated. And I would like to think that this dialogue may only be 30 minutes, but again, we'll see where it goes because usually when me and Connie get into this deep dialogue, time doesn't matter for us. We want to make sure we get the information out there. And now, guys, if you haven't, this show is Tier Talk is for you brave men and women that work in corrections. So please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. That bell is going to notify you every time I post a video. Again, we're going to our sponsors. When we come back, let's talk about being frustrated. Stand by. All right, and we're back. Okay, so we all went through moments of frustration. So I wish I could say that you can come into corrections and you're going to love every minute of it. And I don't think in the course of me doing this channel, the lifespan of this channel, I have ever said that. I know that even though I put the profession on this high level, I don't minimize the fact that, yeah, there are going to be some shitty moments here. And most of the time, believe it or not, the moments that are kind of shitty, it deals with probably our coworkers, probably management. And I think the frustration comes from just in general, dealing with the people that are in this profession. And one thing is when you come in, you have to remember the reasons why you want to be in this profession. And hopefully it's for the right reasons. Because again, me and Connie mentioned this before, if it's for the money, which is probably not that great, if it's for the, these are things that aren't going to last when you're going through these moments where you just don't know why you took it. There has to be a greater cause that you can relate to that will help you when you go through these moments where it's like, man, why the hell did I make this choice to begin with? So please remind yourself, like, when I'm entering this profession, why am I putting myself in here? You know, what do I hope to gain? What is it that I hope to give back? Because that's also key. But Connie, let's talk about frustrations, Connie. Have there, been a time where you were just completely frustrated with the profession? And I know, and in the end, you get so frustrated that it's like, you know what, man, I just want out.
So for sure. I think as we encounter various scenarios in the facilities, it's like you get to a point where you can't believe it's this bad, or you can't believe that we're at this again, right? Like whatever that thing is for you. I know I had the experience of, staffing. Staffing for me was a sticking point. Arguing, advocating, creating all kind of business cases for why we need to change the staffing matrix, why it wasn't appropriate, why, people were just exhausted. People, here it is, someone would make a mistake, and instead of like looking at the process and looking at what else could have went wrong, it was just so easy to blame the person. And, quite honestly, like that gets old, instead of us really dealing with the issue at hand, we're looking at who to point the finger at, where to lay the blame at. And, maybe there are some managers out there that are okay kind of throwing their people under the bus, but I wasn't. And so the big challenge for me was, how do I continuously have this same conversation? You feel like you're beating a dead horse. You feel like, can we get past this? Could we just find a solution? And then there's a point where you just keep talking. It's like, why am I still talking? My voice clearly doesn't matter because I'm raising the issues. I'm bringing forth the arguments that we all could agree on, that these are reasonable reasons why we need to make some changes. And sometimes, like, you just don't get the answers that you're looking for. And I think I'd gotten to a point where it was like, all right, I'm going to just stop talking. The most I could do is make sure that in the facility, the staff was good, they were supported. And if there were any lashes per se that anyone was going to have to get, I'd just get them, right? Because I needed to somehow provide some relief to the staff. But it is the frustration that, like, you get to that point where you're like, all right, enough is enough. Thankfully, as a manager, there was a couple of days that I had to say, I'm going home today. Like, I'm going home early. Like, they're getting nothing extra from me today because I'm frustrated. Because if I stay here, I may say something that I shouldn't say to somebody, or I may do something that I shouldn't do. And sometimes it is how you have to protect yourself when you are starting to feel beat down and defeated, and like there are no solutions because everything you offer is getting rejected.
Yeah, a while ago, no, actually, I'm sorry, not a while ago, a couple of days ago, we were actually talking about, the limitations of management. I think a lot of people think that when management moves up, they get into this bigger world, but there's actually a lot more limitations, believe it or not, because I like what you mentioned about globalized problems. Is that what you said? You basically said that you kind of get tossed into a bigger world with more problems, and even though you're in a bigger space, that just opens it up for more problems. And I noticed something. Right now, corrections is going through a very unique time. A lot of pressure. You got the COVID concerns where there's just pressure to release inmates. There's just a lot of stuff going on that really puts a heavy demand on staff. And when that heavy demand comes from higher up, and you have the concerns from frontline that have to meet that demand, you can kind of see middle management getting pushed up. You know what I mean? So basically the pressure is coming from both sides, and during that squeeze, middle management is kind of getting like, okay, I got to do something. So the reason why some of this dialogue is probably going to have to go back towards middle management is because I think that they are the cornerstone for where the frustration ends up, if that makes any sense. Because even if everybody looks at the front line, yes, don't get me wrong, the front line has to deal with a bulk of the work. But if you have good management and good leadership that's willing to bring those concerns to the top, and then if you have, these management people that just really don't listen. It's like, I want this done, and you go ahead and have to get it done. You got to realize something. They're in the middle, stuck in that translation, trying to find balance. And, I could understand why they would get frustrated, because they're in the middle trying to please both extremes, and they're getting the push and pull from both sides. And I think that when this heavy demand starts coming in during these crazy times that we're going through, I think you actually see the limitations a lot clearer as management. Because here's what I have. Let's say I have a person that wanted to make an impact and have the ability to fly, right? So let's say I have this person that, really had the ability to really take off, right? And all of a sudden, the demand just becomes great and great, especially during these times. And even though middle management is trying to, have this dialogue with upper management to try to say, we could do this, and try to utilize some discretion, which is what you want your management to do, and they just constantly get shut down. I think this may be the first time where they actually feel the roof come crashing down. Like maybe before, I know there's a roof there, but I still got some movement. But man, now all of a sudden this roof has come down, and I just, lack of a better term, excuse me, but I just can't breathe. I just have no way to move. I have no way. And by the way, let me add something else too. The squeeze is actually coming from the top, but I also like to think the floor is coming up. You know what I mean? Because you have the front line pushing, and you have the ceiling coming down, and this person's in the middle, trying to balance something that just can't be balanced. I like when you said before about when you talked about how, we have the blame game. That happens a lot when you're in that pressure cooker and everybody's so afraid to make a wrong decision that what they do is, the moment something happens, especially when you're stuck, this is where it's crazy, but when you're stuck in times where it's crazy as it is today, you want people to make decisions, right? But then you won't be forgiving if there's a mistake made along the way. So you wind up wanting to enforce people to step up and do this, and do this. And you have to be assertive, but, all right, fine. But if I make one mistake and you're quick to blame me and basically like as if the intent was horrible to begin with, which it wasn't, I'm making a million decisions a day. Well, now I'm going to become hesitant, and you're going to lose the quality that probably brought me into that position to begin with. And I'll be honest with you, I'm starting to realize this right now during this time, when there's all that pressure going on, and we're not showing appreciation to the employees for what they're doing. And I said, I'm including middle management. Try to blame them once. And the moment you do, they're going to be like, screw this, I'm out, with no regret. But how do you feel about what I just said, the little monologue there?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I can't tell you how many administrators, how many of my colleagues that was like, Connie, fuck it, I'm out. I can't stay no more. I can't do it no more. Look at the things they want us to do. Look at the marching orders we're getting. Why don't they come down here and see what we're trying to do in the facilities? Why don't they come down here and see whether or not what they're telling us to do is actually practical? Why don't they come down here and see firsthand what's happening with the staff, what's happening with the offenders? Like, it's one thing if you're sitting on the ivory tower and you're just kind of giving these orders and you're sending us out to go get this done. It's another thing when you understand the intricacies of how I'm supposed to achieve that thing you're asking me to do. I mean, if you know that I've got a facility where it's always live, right? For you to tell me, yes, bring all your team together and train everyone together, how would I do that when I know that everyone has a caseload of about 15 or 20 for the day, right? You got the officers like, what kind of training you got going on back there when we got 30 inmates down here, right? Like, it just doesn't work out sometimes, the expectations that they may have of middle managers and what the reality is in the facilities.
I also think, too, that I think sometimes higher level management, upper management, they honestly think that maybe middle management will stick around and they can kind of be mistreated a little bit. Like, I think they take for granted that the fact that, hey, you know what? This person may be middle management, but don't think that they're going to be around forever if you don't start giving them a little something, because eventually the person's going to make a decision. Like, I got to start doing stuff for me. This is messing with my health. I'm coming into work counting how many hours I have left the moment I come in. Yeah, you know it. That's very unhealthy. And the thing is that sometimes I think what would be great, and I know we mentioned this before, but I think it would be great is for the person that's trying to mediate the concerns to meet that middle ground. Does anybody ever stop to ask them how they're doing? I know everybody's so focused on the outcome that they negate the effort. And I will tell you one thing, something I learned today that was great, something that really mattered to me. And it wasn't about me, by the way. It was about someone else who I hold in high regard.
It wasn't about you?
No, it wasn't about me. Story time with Connie. You know what I mean? It wasn't about me, I promise. It was about someone else that I hold in high regard. But sometimes, maybe about a second of the day, I do think about other people. But after that, it goes, I promise you, I start thinking, what the hell am I doing? I bring it right back to me. Listen, you think I'm lying? Every moment of the day, it's like every day. How you guys doing? Welcome to Terror Talk. No, Gangi, this is your admin now. Oh yeah, sorry. I work for other people now. I get the roles confused. Sometimes I bring people into the office and I'm thinking like, wait a second. Remember, you're admin. You're not a host. Address the damn problems. You know what I mean? So what happened was I noticed something, and I think this mattered to me. Outcome surfaced, right? So everybody can see an outcome, right? Whether you like it or not, you can see the outcome. And most of the time, selfish people, if it doesn't go the way they want it, it's like, like little kids, you haven't made the effort. Well, yeah, I have. But sometimes it's very hard to prove the effort that you make, because I really think sometimes the effort is not seen. And I don't know if that's just so much of a middle management dialogue we're having here. I think that could be anywhere, but for now, focus on middle management. I think the effort is not seen. I think the effort is a trust. Now, hear me out, because I know what I'm saying. I believe makes sense. I think that when you're a good leader and you've built that rapport with your people, they believe you do the effort regardless of the outcome. Like, you don't have to show me you're trying. I know that. And therefore, if the outcome's good or bad, I'm okay with it, because I know there's an effort behind there. And that really says a lot about the individual, because again, I can't prove it. I just can, you just have to trust me enough to know that I'm trying, and what's great is when you hear that, like, when you have people that, let's say, are frustrated, because it makes sense, demanding times, is a lot of work, people are overwhelmed. It doesn't mean they don't do the job. Of course they do the job, but they're going to want to vent, and we need to listen to that. We need to listen to what they have to say. But it's great for them to know that at least there's an effort. At least people are trying, but unfortunately, because of the times, this is what has to happen. Because I think if they understand that people are putting an effort, they're okay with the outcome. All they want is for someone not to blindly say yes all the time. So, to hear that people trust in someone, knowing that I know this person would do that, that says a lot, because that really is about who that individual is and the rapport that they have amongst their people. Because I'm sure, Connie, people want the outcome, and when they don't get the outcome, they get pissed off and they get frustrated. And really what they need to do, and I don't know if you would agree with this, is that they need to have trust that the person, if it's a good leader, is committing to the effort, correct?
For sure. I think one thing that gets lost is that when someone has a lot of experience, they can make something that's a catastrophe look so simple, right? They can go in and fix it. Give them an hour. Give me 45 minutes. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to make this happen. Just because over the years I have amassed whatever skills, abilities, relationships, networks, you name it, because I've been able to leverage that for you to get the outcome that you want, I think it's easy for folks to take for granted how much work had to get done to make something happen. And even when you have that person who can make things happen, I think the bigger challenge comes when with all that they bring to the table, they weren't able to make it happen. And then they get reamed out because they weren't able to make it happen. So if for all this effort that you've got people kind of taking for granted, and the one time you're unable to achieve that thing, you use the same effort. You leveraged all your network. You did everything that you would always do for you to make things happen. And in this instant that you weren't able to achieve it, I think the challenge is that we're unable to quantify those relationships that we've built, or those different skills that we might have utilized in order to be successful in all the other things that you gave me as orders to go do. And I feel like that's kind of where the rub comes. I think that's where the frustration comes, because it really is, I've done everything you asked me 100 times, and it's the one time I'm unable to make it happen. There isn't like that, I guess, understanding that, you know, I got a good person, or maybe it is the trust. I trust this person. I know that they're always able to make it happen. Something must have went wrong, or this is really something that unrealistic that I'm requiring of that person at the time. But I don't know necessarily that people are doing that sort of reflection, right? It's just you're looking for the outcome. I don't think people really want to hear your excuses, depending on what the thing is that you've been told to go out and do.
You know, one of the things I like that you mentioned, besides, you know, obviously I like everything that you said, but one of the things that I took right to the heart was, you get someone that brings everything to the table, a shitload of effort, and then it's kind of like it's not even looked at. It's kind of like, I don't care about, you know, and that comes from both sides. I'm sorry, frontline too, you know, upper management as well, but frontline too. And it gets to the point where this person has committed all this work to try to say why this is needed. You know, it could, the translation can go both ways, by the way. It could be all that work to communicate something to the front line, or it could be all that work to communicate something to upper management, or it could be all that work just to bring a damn balance, like a compromise. Because again, middle management, it's a lot of work to speak those languages. And then all of a sudden, when you put all this effort in and it's kind of like disregarded, like it's like as if it doesn't matter, I could understand why good people will turn around. And guys, we're adults. I'll say it's like, fuck it. You know, fuck this place, fuck everything. And then either just go through the motions and literally stop caring, or just take off, you know, at the end of the day. Just literally, I'm done with it so much that I'm going to take off. And we'll get to that point, because that's where we take it off too. There's a part of that I want to discuss later on. But just to touch on a few more things here. When we go through this and when someone becomes frustrated, I don't know if this is so much a solution, because I sometimes you just have to let people vent, and sometimes maybe that is the solution in itself. Maybe that's the first time people in these positions are being heard. And I actually find it awesome that, you know, I could be part of that on any level. You know, again, people vent to me, not even just locally. I get, you know, people venting from me across the country, and I try to respond. Hey, you get it now. You get it now. I've ruined your life. And you know what's funny? Since you're on mute, people think my jokes are dead. So can you unmute it, and can I get that laughter, please? There it is. There it is. Okay, you can mute. People knew the joke wasn't dead. All right, there. I needed that, guys, because I'll tell you something. Every time I say a joke, people are like, dude, there's nobody laughing. That's because people are muted when I talk, just like I'm muted when they talk. So there's some laughter going on. It's just you can't hear it. I got a very picky audience sometimes, I'll be honest with you. So anyway, so I want to ask your thoughts on this, Connie, because I had a good discussion on this today. Okay, so check this out. So, all right, so let me see if I can explain this. Okay, so when you have good people, right, and they do the work, right? Good people may not do the work because they're looking for external incentive. Like, I'm not looking for appreciation. I'm not. I'm looking to do the work because I find value in the work, or value in myself doing the work, value of the outcome of the work, whatever the case may be, but the word value is there, right? So when they start getting hit with all these crazy demands, and the demands are more tedious than really anything else, they start questioning the value of what they're doing, because at the end, the work is just tedious, but what am I getting from it? What am I able to give back? Especially if you're dealing with management that's very inconsistent, kind of changing with the wind, and really not understanding that, every time you do a swift, a swift change, there's someone that's deeply affected by that. Maybe for you, it's just a quick changing of a word as you delegate it out. But there is someone that's actually literally doing it, that's putting their heart and effort in this part. And then you do that one word and they're like, fuck, I spent hours doing this, and, can I at least someone say, hey, I'm sorry, or just acknowledge what I've done. So, when I got to do that ship, at least there's an appreciation there. But I do notice something though, real quick. And this was part of the dialogue here. So again, you have someone that, I would like to think that most people, when they move up, hopefully they move up for the right reasons. There's value in what they feel that they're doing. There's value in what they give back. And when they start losing that sense of value, so I'll give you an example. If I had a good manager, and right now we're hit through some really harsh times, and this person is just looking because they want out, right? They want out, right? So the first thing I think about, right, the fact is, I guess they're no longer valuing their work, right? Could be. So my next step as management is if it's hard for me to try to get them to find value in their work, because what I'm giving to them, really it's just, random assignments that just have to get done because the pressures of the time. I think the next step for management is to show appreciation. Okay, I may not be able to instill value, unfortunately, because the work, how you view the work, but the appreciation should carry a lot of weight. Now, when you have people that come in to do the work for the value, the appreciation may not be what they're looking for, because again, it's that external incentive. I'm not looking for that appreciation, believe it or not, Gangi. I had value in what I did. So even if you appreciate what I do, it doesn't relate to the fact that it's going to put value back into what I'm doing. So you could appreciate me. You could buy, food for whatever it is that you do. But in the end, that's not going to give me the value that I need to continue to be motivated in what I do. So is there another step there? Like, is there something that after, if the person loses a sense of value in what they're doing, and then as management, I'm saying, well, you know what, maybe I can appreciate the person. Just let them know that I appreciate what they're doing, but that's not enough. What would be another step? Is there another step?
So I don't know that there's necessarily another step. I think maybe sometimes it's a matter of having a conversation with the person to find out what makes you feel appreciated, right? It's like some people want the money, right? Give me more money, I'm good. Some people feel more appreciated when you acknowledge the good work that they do. Others feel appreciated when you give them autonomy. I'm going to give you this assignment. I trust that you're going to make this happen. You're going to take care of it. That makes me feel appreciated. That makes me feel valued. I think we don't take the time to really get to know our people, to understand what really makes them tick. It's not about the money. It's not about, maybe it's, I want my peers to acknowledge that, like, I got their backs, or that, like, I'm a good worker. I want my peers to acknowledge that my skills are up to par. Like, whatever that thing is, I think we do need to make time, because I don't think there's a blanket statement. I don't think that this is going to work for everyone. I really do believe that the more that we get to know the people who work with us, who work for us, that then we can actually be intentional about how we appreciate them. And granted, in our system, if you're in a unionized system, there isn't, I can just give you a merit raise. I could just give you, like, those things are negotiated outside of us. Are there ways to give bonuses? I've not seen that in corrections. Yeah, in corporate, you get your bonus, you get these other incentives, but I think we've got to get a little more creative in using what we have access to, and not necessarily looking for, everyone to just have their own internal motivation to make them do a great job every day. Acknowledgement and appreciation will always go a long way. people will work harder, they will work smarter, they will come up with ways to help you when you acknowledge the goodness that they bring to the table. That's across the board.
Right. You know what? I actually, maybe you could dive in a little deeper with something you just said, because I think this may hit home with somebody. You actually used autonomy as a reward.
Mm-hmm.
Can you dive into that a little bit?
So, behind the wall, our reality is that everything is pretty regimented, right? Everything is on a time slot. Everything is, this is what the policy says. This is what the procedure says. But if you actually give someone the autonomy to go out and make something happen, I said to you, you know what, Lisa, I need you to see 25 people today. On a regular day, that is crazy. I may not be able to see 25 people. But if I don't say, give the list to the officer, let the officer call them down, blah, 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 Lisa now has a direction. But if I say, just go see them, Lisa can say, you know what, let me go to the housing unit. There's about 4 in this unit. I know the officer in there. I can probably get these guys to come to the day room. They won't have to come to the clinic. Let me go to this unit. Let me go to the school area. I think there's 2 here. The moment you start giving people a little autonomy to troubleshoot and make things happen, and it shows that you trust them to go out there and to accomplish the mission.
Me being not a superficial person, I would actually choose autonomy over the money. Actually, I believe that has more longevity, and the people that I know of would probably want that autonomy, because I feel that their main concern is that when they're going through these tough times, they're losing a lot of that sense of control. And I think that is a great way to, go back to staff and say, listen, I know you're going through something right now, so let's see if there's something that we can give you some power over. I was reading something, and we'll get to in a little bit, about when it comes to choosing paths. And they say, like, sometimes, and we discussed this before, is that you may not have the answer to the big things, but don't discredit the answers for the little things, because sometimes that's all we have, the answers to the little questions. Now, this is where the dialogue is going to get a little bit deeper here. And again, I really don't know which way we're going to go with this, but I thought it was interesting enough to go ahead and discuss. So when you get frustrated, we talked about the fact that, some people will feel trapped and kind of remain in the profession, just go through the moments, get disenfranchised. And I hate that when you have good people that just find themselves stuck and they just kind of, just give it up and, just kind of go through the moments. Maybe they can find a way to redefine themselves in the profession, maybe. Or maybe they look to say, you know what, I'm done and I'm going to get ahead and go. So part of the new perspective here, because I know we've discussed this before, but not from this perspective, is that I know when you make choices, you move forward, hopefully, if they're the right choices. Fear keeps you back. So I think a lot of the concerns that we have, and this was something that was taught to me today, is that we get stuck in our past and we wind up repeating the same mistakes without us realizing it. Like, we may not realize that the choices that we make are kind of the same choices, just different, I don't know if you want to say situations, but we tend to make the same choices. And therefore, maybe there's a bit of influence on our past that we just can't escape. And how much of the decisions we make are really based on the moment at hand. Like, am I on a path where I see the road in front of me, and am I making a decision based on the road in front of me, or am I actually making a decision by looking behind me to move forward? And if that's the case, and we're stuck, let's say we feel that we're stuck in this profession and we have to make a choice, how much of the choice that we make is stuck on past decisions that have really just not been that good for us thus far? And how do we identify the fact that we're still making those choices based on those past decisions that we just can't escape? This is the deep part, Connie, because this is
I'm like, that's a tough one. I mean, because that means that there's a point where you have to take a pause, right? You have to take a pause and do your own self-inventory. How did you get to where you are now? Because, there's a saying, like, if, things continue to repeat themselves, it's because you haven't learned the lesson you were meant to learn from it. And so that's kind of when people are, I mean, I guess it's a little difficult because in corrections, we are very routined. And so we are doing the same things, probably usually the same ways, and our routine probably doesn't change up much. However, I feel like if you've made a mistake, it can't be always someone else's fault, right? Like sometimes you do have to sit back and see, so what did I do to sort of get me here? You know, did I do something wrong? Let me correct that. You know, you take the mental note of something you might have said, you know, like people make mistakes. That's just life, right? But I think it's when we make those mistakes and then we don't want to acknowledge that you made a mistake, because when you don't acknowledge it, you don't learn from it. That's just a reality. So for me, it really is, you know, we're going to make mistakes. Things are going to come up. We can't always look to point the finger. And when we do, we're bound to make that same mistake again because we haven't been willing to take ownership for how we got to this point to begin with. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, and the key is to identify it is a mistake too, because sometimes you could think the road is great that you're on, you know, based on whatever limited information. And as you develop in your career or as you progress in life, you may start getting new information that makes you start to question the choices that you've made up onto that point. And then there's going to be a crazy awakening when you finally get to that point where it's like, you know, what have I done? Like, yes, I thought that everything I made was great, but I think the questions are not even so much what I've done, but why have I done it? And then when you start asking yourself, why have I done it? That's when you start identifying were these choices really yours to begin with. You know, so, you know, how many times are the past choices that we made really based on us solely making them? Like, how do we know there wasn't an influence? Like, you know, I became a teacher because my parents wanted me to be a teacher, but somehow or another, I made that as if that was my own. And I'm following this path, believing that, you know, the journey I'm on is really my own. But in the end, I finally wake up and say, you know what made me start this journey to begin with? Why did I want to become a medical professional? Holy crap, I convinced my whole time that as I move up, this is the path I wanted, but the foundation was never mine. You know, I may have said that, okay, I want to be, you know, an officer, and I want to be a sergeant, and I want to be, a captain and a superintendent. Here I am achieving all these things. And one day I wake up and I said, well, wait a second. I actually wanted to be a police officer. I just realized that everything I've ever done up to that point, it started from something that I didn't want to do. But now I've solely convinced myself that these are the things I wanted. And now that I'm at the top, it's a lot harder for me to admit that this was never my dream to begin with, ever. So I think it really, like, I love what you said, how you have to have that insight, how you have to be able to look back with clarity first to identify why you made the choices that you made, right? But then I also think that you have to take that same clarity, and once you identified that there is something with the past that had an influence that really wasn't yours, and you created a path based on an influence that really was external and not internal, well, then I think you have to look at the future and really focus on what's in front of you. And then really see, are there any choices I can make at this point that are mine? I don't care how little they are. Just something that you can call your own that can create a good foundation. Am I making any sense?
It absolutely makes sense. I mean, you know, you got to be willing to take the risk. Like, that's just what it is. I mean, yes, it may not paint the best picture of yourself, but you have to be comfortable in knowing I made some mistakes along the way. You know, take the time to reflect on those mistakes and understand why they were mistakes. Maybe they weren't. Maybe those were the steps that you were supposed to take to get to where you are now, right? And so be able to come to terms with that. And now that I'm here, I mean, I think about those people who, you know, worked a career their entire lives. They're now 60 years old and they're going back to college, right? It's like, oh my goodness, like, but clearly they made a decision. Even though I lived my life, I've had my career, I really wanted to do this in life, whatever that thing is, and they're working towards it. So coming to terms that, you know what, maybe I didn't make all the right decisions, but the here and now, I have an opportunity to do something different, something that's going to make me happy, something that will be fulfilling, something that's going to bring me the joy or fill the void that I feel is missing.
Right. Now, for the last part of the dialogue, it's the part that I don't have an answer for, and it deals with the destination. So, you know, and again, guys, however you want to apply this, there is really good knowledge that we just said. It's just insightful. And again, this is knowledge that usually isn't applied to our profession because part of it is, you know, psychological, but also part of it is philosophical, believe it or not. And sometimes in philosophy, the power's in the question, not the answer. It's meant for you to think. And I have to realize sometimes there's just not an answer to a concern that someone has. But the destination.
There is an answer, but it's not for someone else to find that answer.
Yeah,
you have to find that answer for yourself.
Well said. And that's what the question, you're right. And that's what the question's meant to do. You're right. 100%. So with that said, so I look at two things. I know we talked about the road that you're on, and we talked about the past having an influence on the road that you're on, and then eventually trying to say, okay, well, you know what, this isn't for me, and then blindly stepping off that road into a destination that's unknown, because sometimes you may feel so trapped that I'm willing to jump off, and wherever I go, I go. So at that point, to me, there's two things here. You're either running from or you're running to. Am I running from my past? Am I running to a destination? But if you don't know where you want to head, but you know right now that you're on the wrong path, you do know something, right? You do know something. So like if I know that this path isn't for me, and then someone says, well, where do you want to be? And I say, well, I don't know. Well, the next question is, well, then how do you know that this path that you're on isn't for you now? So this is where I don't know if there's an answer to, but this is where I just got, maybe if there's a way we could generalize something here. Generally, not specifically, but when you're lost and you're trying to find that value in yourself by making sure that you put yourself on a path that brings you joy. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, you deserve it, right? So let's be honest. The path that you want to be on ultimately is a path that brings you joy and happiness. I think that's ultimately it. And I think that I'm able to know that if the path I'm on now doesn't bring me joy and happiness, then that's not the path I need to be on. But it doesn't mean I understand the path I need to be on that brings me joy and happiness. I just know that I want joy and happiness in my life, right? So with that said, if I'm confused about where I need to be, but I know that whatever it is, I want to be happy, I want to have value, and I want to have a level of joy in this life that makes me not count the hours I have left every day when I'm at work. Is there some general advice that you could provide to someone who is searching for their destination?
So I would have to say that if right now you're on a path that you feel is not the right path for you, you have to take some time to plan your next step, right? Like, I don't think that anyone can just say, well, this is what you need to do. Because quite honestly, if anyone can jump in and tell you that, they're just telling you that based on what they know. They're telling you that based on their life experiences, not necessarily factoring in everything that encompasses you, right? So my first thought is plan ahead, right? Like, you know what? I'm not happy here. I can't do this for much longer. When you say that, it's like, okay, well, how much longer can you do it for? You know what? I think I only got 6 months in me. I think I only got a year left in me. Okay, well, what can I do in that year to prepare me for my next step, right? If it's a matter of taking an exam, it's a matter of getting some sort of certificate, it's a matter of going through some sort of training, it's a matter of coming up with a plan that's going to get you to the next step. You know what? I think I want to be over here in the next 12 months. Okay, what network do I need to build in order to get into this space, in order to get into this new space for me? You know, who do I have to start to network with? I mean, I think about myself, right? I started the academy. It was like, all right, well, who do I need to get to know? Who do I need to talk to? I don't know who I need to know or who I need to talk to, right? But when you start putting stuff out in the universe, you start finding people. So like, don't hesitate to research. Don't hesitate to ask questions. Don't hesitate to reach out to people. Gary Cornelius connected me to you. I didn't know you. I was like, Anthony Gangi. It was like the day before my birthday. You like, oh yeah, tell me about yourself. Right? I was like, who's this guy? Why is he telling me to tell him about myself? But like, here I am meeting someone new. I knew I wanted to be in a different space. I knew I wanted to get to know people. And I trusted Gary wasn't going to send me to somebody to start networking with who wasn't a good resource, right? And so I think that's what you have to do. You have to know. And that was what, almost a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, something like that. It's almost 2 years ago that happened. So it's like, wow, here it is 2 years later. I talk to this guy every day, right? Like, that's our reality. So the more you position yourself for what your next step is, you may not necessarily know exactly where you want to go, but you know you don't want to be here. And once you know you don't want to be here, you have to start planning. I think the bigger challenge that you have, especially in corrections, is that after you've already done 10 years or you've already done 15 years, it is very hard to say, I'm leaving, right?
No, you're 100% correct. And you know what's funny? When you said, because I remember that when I asked you, hey, tell me a little bit about yourself. You know what's funny? I was thinking that question would sound a lot funnier at 3 a.m. You know? You know what I mean? Like that's a good afternoon question. You know what I mean? But that same question at 2, 3 in the morning, I don't think Connie would have lasted with me for 2 years. Connie would have called up Gary and said, Gary, you know, at 3:01 in the morning, you would have called Gary. Hey, I found 2 memes. I was looking for these earlier today. But before I go into memes, I want to mention something. Then we can come to close. What do you call it? I know sometimes we look for that one road, and I learned a lot, especially through mastery, that maybe the road is a mixture of many roads that merge into one. And all because it hasn't been walked on before doesn't mean you can't be the first person to step on that road. And if you don't know what your destination is, I'm going to read 2 memes that I actually think matter. And they're very related to each other. One is pay attention to the things you're naturally drawn to. They're often connected to your path, passion, and purpose in life. Have the courage to follow them. But the one I like is from T.D. Jakes. If you can't figure out your purpose, figure out your passion. For your passion will lead you right into your purpose. And I think that's a good way to kind of close that part of the discussion. Anything you want to say in closing? Because I want people to know something. The reason why I had this dialogue is because I don't want people to think that I tell people that the profession is going to have all these great moments. There's going to be frustrations and you're going to want out and all these other things. All I'm telling you is just to make sure that, you know, when you leave, you're leaving for the right reasons, not because you're running from something, but rather you're running to something. Because the last thing you want is to jump ship and really not understanding why you're jumping ship and having nowhere to go. I mean, sometimes we get frustrated, but are we really identifying what the frustration is? Is it really the profession? Is it the people? Because at the end of the day, people like that exist in every profession. So you could jump from one profession to the other and find the same exact people. And then what happens is you wind up sacrificing something that maybe you really wanted to do. You know, so ask yourself, why are you in this profession? And then obviously what you can tolerate, but keep that internal why. But for some people who have that purpose, please don't let it be the frustration that pushes you out of the profession. Let it be the purpose. If your purpose is somewhere else, seek the higher purpose and never look back. But if you're running away from frustration, when you're running away from frustration or when you're running away from something, you're constantly looking back instead of looking ahead. And I think that when you're chasing after something, you're chasing the purpose, your focus is ahead. So make sure when you decide to jump ship, you stay focused on the passion, on the drive, and you're not looking back because you're afraid or you're just frustrated. Hey, Connie, anything you'd like to say in closing? Maybe what you got from this dialogue, because we both learned a lot from each other today, and it wasn't really something we scripted.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I would really want to say is that at the end of the day, you are in full control of your choices and the actions that you take with those choices. And so, you know, if you've decided that this career is for you, remember why you got into it and understand that your choice brought you here. And every day from the time you started until where you are now were a series of choices that got you to where you are now, period. So like, if you don't like where you are now, you still have a choice. And your choice, if you want to promote, you want to demote, because some people don't like the role that they're in. You know, if you choose you want to be in another facility, you choose that you want to no longer do this, like, it is your choice. And like, you just have to come to terms with the result of those choices. And if that means you're going to stay in a profession and be miserable for another 15 years, another 10 years, another 5 years, that's your choice. But if you're going to choose to find the goodness in the profession, like, I would 100% support you finding what keeps you happy, what keeps you involved and engaged, what keeps you safe, as well as your colleagues, because that's what's important. You're not there in vain. You know, you're there for a reason.
Yeah, well said. And I just, as I said before, just in closing, these are one of the deeper discussions that me and Connie, like to have, because I think it actually applies to also a bigger audience. Even though we're specifying towards corrections, it could easily be applied to anybody in life going through frustration. And, and there's a lot I learned when I researched the topic. I mean, it's having the discussion and then, coming up with the idea and then calling Connie and then, mentioning where I want to go, what the angles are, and then, stepping off and then calling you back again and say, hey, maybe we should try this and try that. And then when we finally do the show, we don't have no idea what we're, but we start bringing in the thoughts. We feed off each other very well. And it just turns out to be just a good blended dialogue with perspectives from both sides that really meant to converge. It really does. So as always, guys, the show is Tear Talk. If you haven't, don't forget, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. The bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Guys, do not forget, I'll be posting up the interview that Connie has. Young lady's name is Tara Hood. She's an APRN. I believe she's recently retired. And she's just going to share her experience in the profession. And it's going to be an effort to, hopefully she teaches. And that's the key. But ultimately, it's also about to bring respect. Because I don't think we hear enough stories coming from that side of the corrections realm. As always, guys, stay safe.